the Jolly Thoughts podcast in audio and in video, AV. And so I'm joining you from my basement today on American Thanksgiving Day in the year of our Lord 2021. And we've got what is, for me, a super duper exciting conversation with a friend and a mentor, Ken Schenck, who currently works with Campus Edu. We're going to hear a lot about Campus Edu in the actual conversation itself, so I won't talk about it here. We're also going to hear about this book, which is the kind of impetus, the reason, the excuse for the conversation, The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols. We talk about it primarily from the realm of education. That's kind of where we talk about it, so schools, but Nichols' treatise on the death of expertise goes a lot further than that, and it's a really provocative and interesting book, so much so that I actually spoke about it and did a video about it about a month or two ago, and so I'll link to that in this show as well, in case anybody wants to find a little bit more. I'm not really great at stats. I can't really tell what's happening on the internet these days with who's listening to what and watching what. So if you have been engaging with this in any way, it would be really awesome and helpful for you to just let me know. Drop me a note in some way, whether it's on social or just via email on my website, markjudical.com. info@markjudical.com, I think works. I'm not sure. But yeah, it'd be really cool. I'm not looking to get famous on this in any way, shape, or form. I'm just looking to have conversations with people about the kinds of things that I'm working through and thinking about, and it's really just a great excuse for that. But maybe it connects with you, and if it does, that's awesome, and you can feel free to share that with people that you might think it connects with. So without any further ado, today's conversation with somebody that I'm stoked about, Sir Kenneth Schenck.
Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law.
Oh yeah, no, I will keep it. Like I will have the raw evidence, but I won't put it out to the general. That's how I'll actually build a following, by slowly leaking documents afterwards.
It's a strategy.
Who is the inside man? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and just right at the top call you Ken, even though
Yeah.
everyone who should, I should be calling you Dr. Schenck, and we're not gonna call you Skank. We're gonna say Schenck. The only person who, like me, I know has almost as many problems probably getting your last name pronounced correctly.
Je le cure.
C'est ça, yes. Tellement bien. Now, we're joining you. Are you in New York today?
I'm in New York today.
Okay, so New York to New Brunswick. Cool. Well, the reason that you and I are chatting is mostly because I have been greatly longing for this day where I've had the opportunity to actually record a conversation with you. I've had so many great offline conversations with you, and so to be able to even spread your wit and wisdom to the handful of people who will engage with this is, I think, going to be really worthwhile and exciting for me. And you came to mind because it would have been about a few months ago. I read this book here by Sir Tom Nichols called The Death of Expertise. The byline is The Campaign Against Established Knowledge and Why It Matters. And I actually was introduced to his content through a different podcast. I can't remember, frankly, who it was. I think it might have been the Sam Harris podcast, although I probably shouldn't go on record saying that I listened to the Sam Harris podcast. But just occasionally, depending upon his guests.
Enemy research. Opposition research.
100%. So the thesis of his book really kind of is why it resonated with me and why I bothered to read the book is because I was like, something that he's saying is really, really ringing true, and something that I had kind of been noticing for a long time, which is people are super not into institutions. And I feel like they probably have always had a bit of a love-hate relationship with institutions, but in my lived yet limited experience, it seems as though that is being ramped up. And this was before the COVID-19 kind of pandemic, but that in itself and the bunch of other things that kind of happened around it seemed like it kind of elevated the likelihood of being able to see people who have a general distrust in things that are institutional. And then the third chapter of this book is about higher education, which you have relatively a long and storied career in higher education. I know a lot of other people who do, and there's just something about the kinds of things that he articulated in that I was like, I want to hear what people have to say about this. And so I'm really glad that you agreed to chat about it. I know that you have read, I don't know if have you read the whole book or have you just engaged with this chapter?
I uh, drove to Indiana and back, and I listened to about as much as you could take listening, to a book while you're driving.
Yeah.
So I'm probably one or two chapters from finishing it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I kind of reskimmed chapter 3, knowing that we were going to be talking together.
Right. Hard to take notes while you're driving, but I do find
Right. No,
that
I
that's
mean, I have the book,
yes, yes,
you
yes, yes,
know.
yes, yes.
So
Yep,
this
there
is
you go.
this is the horrible situation I find myself in right now. I buy books and then at best listen to them on Audible. So
I'm there. That's how I engage with the book too. I had an Audible, but then like you kind of make little bookmarks, and then later on when you're not washing the dishes or whatever, you go back and go, no, what was that? And you kind of make a few notes. So bit of maybe we can get a subscription or a some ad revenue from Audible. Love you, Audible. Really appreciate what you're doing. Shout out. So, I mean, I have some thoughts, but I'd rather mostly hear your thoughts. So when you engage with this chapter in particular, or kind of anything else, what jumped off the page or out of the speakers to you?
well, I have a split personality. Um, I tell people that I'm a very unusual academic,
Mhm.
because I share the values or I share the interests and a lot of the values of the academy, and yet I feel like I can see the other side, which is how ridiculous the academy is and how irrelevant the academy is, or at least how they appear to be irrelevant at times. So I feel like I have this duality to where everybody likes me half the time and everybody hates me half the time on these sorts of subjects. Because I used to joke when we started Wesley Seminary, early on when Wayne Schmidt became the head of it. He had me come talk to the board, the seminary board, and kind of share, my sense of being dean. And I said something, it's a very typical Ken thing to say. I said, nobody loves the irrelevant more than I do, but we really need to focus on practical ministry. And Wayne loved that quote so much he repeated it over and over again. But of course, I don't really think that anything is totally irrelevant.
Right.
It's more like some things are more immediate. I mean, if you have the 4 quadrants, of was it Steve McVeigh? There's the urgent, and then there's the slow burn, valuable kinds of things. So when I approach Tom's, me and Tom, we're on first. No, when I approach Nichols' book, I have that same kind of reaction. Part of me says, "Yep, yep, 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 yeah, 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 you're right, yeah." And then part of me is like, "Wah, wah, wah," get over it. You're a small little group of people, who and the hordes of the majority are going to run over you. Anyway, so I mean, I have this kind of dual response that I haven't quite figured out how to harmonize them internally. I guess it just depends on which day of the week it is. So my reaction is to say, you're saying a lot of valid things in this chapter, and yet what are you going to do about it? Or uh, the market doesn't care, or you're a complainer. What solutions do you have? I mean, I have mixed reactions to the chapter. I agree with a lot of it. I mean, okay, don't tell anybody, but when Indiana Wesleyan went from Marion College to Indiana Wesleyan University, I just went, yeah, you're a university, and of course, then Southern became a university, and Kingswood became a university, and Oklahoma, Bartlesville became,
Right.
Houghton is, and okay, Houghton is the standout. We're Houghton College. We're not going to lower ourselves to become a university. And I'm like, who are you fooling? You're losing by not joining the team. Now, by the way, there are more complicated reasons for why Houghton, because New York is particularly regulatory. But anyway, I get it. I
Yeah.
think I get what he's saying.
Right.
I'm just not sure it matters. But
So one of the things you allude to right near the end there, for people who don't know, is like kind of the issue, not necessarily of credential inflation, but of maybe in that case institution inflation. So like, do you actually have a good dictionary, Ken's dictionary definition of what a college is versus a university. Because growing up, I did have this kind of intuitive sense that like college often had the word community attached to it. Like it was somehow the more kind of trades type educations, and then arts or universities were often the liberal arts. That's kind of the way that I thought about it. But like you say, that's not really how it seems to be shaking out in practice today.
Well, New York State, you have to have at least 3 doctoral programs in order to be called a university by New York standards. So a lot of it has to do with graduate programs. I think it also has to do with the breadth of disciplines that you cover. But a university suggests that you are you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot of things. You have a depth and a breadth to you that a college doesn't have. But I mean, Wheaton College, I think, is still Wheaton College.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're like Houghton, they probably pride themselves on not lowering themselves to call themselves a university. I mean, I don't know whether Wheaton thinks that way or not, but if you haven't guessed, these are some of the dynamics of academia.
Yeah, so like my undergrad is with what's called Goldsmiths College, which is a division of the University of London. So you can see how people who are, if they want to have this kind of small feel and, like you say, kind of want to be a little bit more narrow in terms of their approach, then they could affiliate themselves with more broader institutions, and that way they can kind of share. But it is so I know we're kind of hopping in as though almost people would presume we would presume that people understand some of the content of the book. So the macro book, like we said, is kind of a little bit about institutions and why people distrust them. But really, when he's referring to the death of expertise, kind of one of Nichols, I think, what I perceive, one of his kind of the beat that he's walking to is the idea that socialism, and I don't mean economic socialism, but this sort of flattening of peoplehood, the idea that everybody is the same, not equally valuable, but actually having equal knowledge, equal access to literally every skill set, is simply not true. And in his opinion, destructive essentially to how things work. And so actually one of the quotes from this chapter in particular, I don't have the actual quote, but he talks about somebody in a classroom. He teaches at the Naval College, and I think he's teaching some first years, and he says something about, he asks a question, and one of the first years answers, well, I don't know, your guess is as good as mine. And his response is, no, my guess is much, much better than yours. And he also talks about teachers who he knows who say, I learn as much from my students as they learn from me, to which he replies, then you must not be a very good teacher. And so he obviously has this idea that you can't, like, to be an expert means that you have, going back to the width and the depth, it means you have a depth of knowledge on a certain area. So a generalist would have a little bit of knowledge about everything. Hi, that's me. Whereas an expert would have, like, this incredible kind of just like a robust and like really, really well thought out and well tested set of knowledge about a specific kind of thing. That's what makes somebody an expert. And he argues that we need experts, but he argues that people don't like experts because in general, they seem like they make, again, this is me distilling Nichols. That makes people who are not experts feel badly about themselves because they don't seem to have either the intelligence or at least the lived experience to have access to that kind of knowledge. And so when it comes to school, one of the things he starts off this particular chapter with is this quote from page 72. He says, "Today when an expert says, 'Well, I went to college,' it's hard to blame the public for answering, 'Who hasn't?' Americans, and I would say by extensions Canadians as well, with college degrees now broadly think of themselves as, quote, educated, when in reality, the best that many of them can say is that they've continued on in some kind of a classroom setting after high school with wildly varying results." And like the idea that gives you something is kind of gone. Like, I don't know what your experience was like, but when I finished high school, it was just, you just went to university. There was almost no thought to what your career was going to be or so it was just kind of the idea that was just what you were going to do. And so it made it think that people were going to then sort of be set up for what's next. you've taught a lot of first years, you've taught a lot of fourth years, and in between. How does some of that resonate with kind of your experience?
Yeah, I definitely have said now for several years that college is the new high school. Um, I definitely, felt that in my last days at Indiana Wesleyan, and that's not a comment on Indiana Wesleyan. I think Nichols, again. I sympathize with a lot of what Nichols says, that, and in fact, one of the things I'm trying to I tried to do it when I was at Houghton. So I was at Indiana Wesleyan for 21 years. I was at Houghton for a little more than 2 years, and now I'm working for an educational software company or platform company called Campus Edu. But I felt in my last couple of years, 3 years at IWU, that again, I'm not saying that students aren't as smart as I'm not saying students aren't as smart as they used to be. That's not what I'm saying. That's something about either the culture or the educational system, that there's more territory you have to cover to get to the same spot as you used to. And I think, again, the two sides of Ken say part of it has to be that we're not teaching them right. We haven't figured out how to teach the gamer brain. The gamer brain has changed now. As I don't know. I'm not an expert to be able to say. Maybe nobody is yet on what gaming does to the brain. But the just young people are coming with a different brain at a different place than they used to. I think. I'm not going to say whether it's better or worse. Obviously, Nichols thinks it's worse, but or he thinks that there's kind of an elitist, and he acknowledges that, kind of an elitist meritocracy kind of dimension. Go to trade school. What are you doing in college? I mean, that's kind of part of the tone of the chapter.
Yep.
Go be an electrician. I mean, that's kind of the tone you get from the chapter a little bit.
Yep.
And of course, as a Christian, I'm like, what about educating, everybody, to some extent, but that I haven't quite completed my thought there. But I do think that one of the things I've been trying to do both at Houghton and at Campus EDU is see if anybody's willing to take me on the idea of what you might call gap STEM courses that stand in between kind of high school and what a typical freshman biology for majors course is like, because I'm not sure that students are coming out of high school ready to handle a college chemistry course, most of them. So all of that is to say that I kind of agree with him, but my approach is, what can we do about it? I feel like his approach is like, you're an idiot, you don't deserve college, said in a snooty British accent, even though he's not snooty. But
or British. Yeah, he's probably snooty, but he's not British. Well, thank you for trying to get the clicks up. Really appreciate that. So I'll make sure to highlight that quote: snooty British accent. You took your PhD in a snooty British land, I believe, so that gives you the ability to speak with authority in that respect.
Although Durham was in the north, so they were snooted upon by the Oxbridge group.
Right.
Oh, you northern, you.
We don't need to say what they actually said. I'm sure it was quite robust and unkind. I do want
And that was not my best British accent, just to make that clear.
That's the one that we have. So, I do want to talk about the Campus EDU a little bit in a few minutes. But I mean, I want to weave in one other part of. You're right. He does seem to have a pretty bleak picture of kind of how higher education is. I don't personally think that it's exclusively out of elitism. I think he's trying to say that meritocracy, for lack of a better term, is unavoidable. I think that's the kind of thesis is like you can't, like when you think about it, this cell phone. No, I don't even need to show the cell phone. I'm talking to you now through a computer. If this thing got taken apart, I would not be able to put it back together. I literally couldn't even reassemble it. I can't understand how this works. Like, is this actually sorcery, Ken? I'm not sure. I'm looking at you and you're like very far away from me. We're talking in real time. This is mind-boggling stuff. And part of him is saying is this kind of innovation, this kind of innovation actually will kind of put this. This kind of technological movement would not have happened. We would not have put a man on the moon if we thought that everybody could put a man on the moon. Like, it was not. It was about understanding that certain people have certain skill sets and have certain wirings, and we want to pour into those people. And so, meritocracy usually ends up carrying, like I said, kind of a ontological, like a value base. So if you do go to trade school, if you do become a mechanic instead of becoming a master master chef is what I was going to say, but that's not.
That too.
A culinary superstar. But if you end up doing something that require, like an actual PhD versus, a 12-month course at a local college, that doesn't actually make you a better person than you. But it does mean that you could have expertise in an area that you don't. You could actually fix a car. Whereas I don't know how you are with cars, Ken. I can't even change my brakes, right? Like I just literally cannot do that. I could, if I wanted to invest a lot of time, it's conceivable that I could eventually figure it out, but I'm not wired that way, and I haven't invested in that direction. So whatever limited expertise I have does not include automotive. So I don't think that he's saying that automotive expertise is not expertise, but he's just
Sure.
acknowledging that it is a certain kind of expertise that's different than astrophysics, that's different than electronic engineering, that's different than civil engineering, right? And that's even part of another thesis in his book where he talks about, I'm trying to remember the term, it's expertise creep, or it doesn't really matter, but the idea that if you're an expert in one area, you might be an expert in all areas. And the prototypical example he talks about is actors. And he says, if you're a fantastic actor, all of a sudden you definitely know a lot about global politics and socioeconomics, and you can speak an awful lot about the medical field or whatever, because all of a sudden you have this platform and people think because you won an Oscar, you know a lot about immunology and stuff like that. So,
Same goes for professors, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Who are you, Tom Nichols, to be writing this book? Are you a sociologist?
It's good. It's a good point. I think he said he brought some people in to look at his book, but you did return a good retort there. Good. I love this. Keep poking the bear. But the other thing that he kind of talks specifically about the school is when schools become businesses. And the actual on page 94, he has a short quote that says, "When college is a business, you can't flunk the customers." And so he also talks about the idea that credential inflation and moving people through a system has created, he says, PhDs who will teach for food. The idea that people are getting doctorates, and there's more people getting doctorates than there are people to teach, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's a weird, we value expertise, but creating experts for no good functional reason is a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And then I know that you obviously have a lot of stories about people that you're teaching who are, at the end of the day, you're looking at them and you want to give them a D, or you want to give them what their actual grade is worth, in your opinion. And although you are an odd duck who is very generous and kind and gracious, but you want to go and just kind of say, I just know that this is not A+ work, whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to know in the back of your brain that they or their parents or their bank are writing the checks that eventually go into your bank account to pay for your mortgage and to pay for your food. What is it like to kind of deal with that dynamic?
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong on these things. I mean, maybe he's only giving, one side to the story, but students can get pretty cranky if you don't give them an A. I'm actually dabbling in some online courses with some pretty famous behemoths of online education, and I did get an A- in one of the courses, but I can tell you I've gotten some A's that I thought, did you even open the file? because I tried to open the file and I couldn't open it after the fact. I thought, boy, you gave me that A pretty quick. And two, I'm having trouble opening the file I submitted to you. So I do get the feeling that this particular institution, which will go unnamed, which is a behemoth, it's not a Christian institution, a behemoth of online education, there is not every professor, but there's a little bit of happiness distribute, anyway, kind of,
Yeah.
here, you get an A and you get an A and you get an A. But or maybe they just know that I'm that brilliant, but probably that's not it. So there is that, and he alludes to, or maybe he says it explicitly, the whole teacher evaluation thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a dean more than once, and I absolutely, student evaluations of teachers is important. It's a very important thing. But I personally do not think that student evaluation should be the be all and end all of rank promotion or tenure, because students can be brutal, and sometimes it's valid and sometimes it's not, in my opinion. So I think it's important, but it cannot be definitive, in my opinion, student evaluations of professors. Now I see both sides. I've known professors who I think you're hiding behind the fact that students complain about you to argue that you're quality, when maybe you're just a bad teacher. So I can see both sides, but he's not entirely wrong.
There's something faintly, there's an echo of pastoral ministry in there, which is probably worth just hinting at for a second, which is this awkward kind of place that like a pastor and or prophet, to the degree that those two callings will overlap. Like, you're not there to just give people what they want, right? You're there, like a doctor in some respects, you're there to give people what they need. And but when you're giving people what they need that they also explicitly do not want, it's going to be really tough for them to view that as healthy, tasty medicine, right? And so if it was reviewed, I remember there's a friend of mine who ended up having a church survey done while he was serving at this church, and ever since then, I've always been really reticent to, every time somebody says the word survey, I go, maybe there's another option. Maybe there's something else we could talk about, because the survey didn't go very good for him, because it just opened up an opportunity for people to say, you know what, this is actually what I would prefer, and this is what I like. And it turns out that the overwhelming majority of people would prefer not to have him serving in the position that he was serving in. And sometimes you can see how, kind of like you alluded to with teachers, there could be value in that. Like, you really do need to know the truth of what's going on. Except the truth is not democratic. That's the tug and pull of this whole thing. It's not just like, oh, well, 75% of people don't like it, so it's probably bad. That's not how this will work. But right. 75% of people don't like it, that must mean that we're doing the right thing. That's also not true. So like the personal preference thing is you want to say it's an ingredient in the recipe, but it shouldn't be it shouldn't be at the top of your ingredients list. You got to be looking for whether or not, in education, you have to be looking for whether or not people are being well educated, I guess, is the bottom line.
And there's that same tension between, I would say, that the church and the academy. Sometimes the church, I mean, in a perfect world, the academy would bring expertise to the church. The church would use the academy as a resource. And occasionally the church would say, well, maybe we need to relook at that. However, the academy is not always right. Sometimes the academy does go off the deep end. He uses an example from Yale, where the professor basically says, it's not my job to make everything safe. Learning isn't necessarily always safe. I don't know what, in that particular case, whether the professor was right or the student was right. But I mean, you've probably heard of this new venture called the University of Austin, that Jonathan Haidt and some others are behind. It's the idea of a university that's actually interested in truth.
Shocking.
Which means, and of course, the problem is we're all subjective. And this is one of my critiques of Nichols is he's not objective. what constitutes quality is often has cultural elements as well.
Mhm.
And so I'm not sure he's entirely self-aware. He might be of, or not entirely, but none of us are. But I mean, I'm not sure he's entirely self-aware of the cultural forces on him as well. But the idea of the University of Austin is that we're gonna throw all this political dimensions to truth out the window, and we're just gonna have a hardcore fist fight over what's real. I mean, not fist fight. I'm making that up, but
Mhm.
a kind of a true enlightenment venture. We'll pretend that postmodernism never happened. But
Texas. Lots of things happening in Texas these days. You can't pin that place down. You just have no idea what's going to
don't
come.
mess with Texas.
Well, as we kind of wrap it up a little bit here, one of the things I'm going to link to at the end is I did do a few reflections on this book, and the one reflection was I put a poll online. Something in the book made me really think about this, which is he said that people who know the most, in many respects, are least confident about most things. So another way of saying that is people who project the most confidence about knowing everything often are the least informed people, in his opinion. And so he kind of alludes to the fact that a lot of people in this day and age don't really like to say that they don't know. I don't know. So I put a poll online and I asked, how many of you are very comfortable saying, I don't know? And the overwhelming majority of people who responded to the poll said very, very comfortable. I think it was like 97% or whatever. I was like, that's fascinating, because if you look at online rhetoric, it really doesn't look like that. It looks like people are pretty confident about things that they really can't know that much about, functionally. And so I did a few reflections, which I'll kind of link to on that. But before we kind of wrap up here, and I want to know a little bit about Campus EDU, because Campus EDU kind of seems like you refer to the split. You refer to the split-brainedness of yourself, and you do from afar. You're just like, I can't. Sometimes I feel like I know you, and then other times I'm like, I don't know you at all. Like I can't figure out what's going on with this. And so this is this seems like a really cool opportunity to kind of democratize. Maybe it's not really the right word, but to in almost a populist sense, to get information and to get training and education out to people. But part of the concern things that like kind of I wonder about is the easier that we make it sometimes, do we not also kind of devalue it to the point that it becomes easily kind of like ignored or not taken seriously or whatever. And so this is what I'm trying to figure out is, tell me a little bit more about why you're so confident that Campus EDU is the future.
Well, so I'm doing a series on their blog, on the campus blog, on why campus. I've done 3 posts so far. One is on the future of modality in education, where I basically say, here's where I think modality is headed. By that I mean online. Mm-hmm. The first one was on expanding your market, and the one that just came out today is actually on enriched curriculum, and maybe I should focus on that. Just the first that might be a good place to start, mm-hmm. Because of market forces, and academics generally hate, as Nichols indicates, hate to refer to the university or college as a business. They absolutely hate that. But of course, presidents and boards absolutely think of them as businesses, or else the college is in deep trouble. You have to, and of course, then when the faculty don't get paid because there's no money, then they begin to realize that a college is a business as well. That doesn't happen so much anymore. But my grandfather taught at a Bible college. And there were days when he was paid in soup, so watery soup during the Depression, yeah. Greens. Anyway, that's not important right now. So many Christian colleges are going through these cycles of budget cuts and layoffs. I know a college, a very successful college in general, whose strategy has always been, we'll be the last one standing, and then we'll have plenty of students, but they did like a 20% staff layoff in a particular area. just this past month. So those are realities. And so rather than say, well, as long as on my little island, Tom Nichols is on a little island of 50 students who are all millionaires and they can pay me to tell them about arcane Soviet relations, I'll be fine. But he's partially right. Do all colleges need, if we want to just be harsh about it, do all colleges need to survive? They don't need to. I was thinking about the Wesleyan colleges, and I want to go on the record, definitely keep this quote: I want all the Wesleyan colleges to survive. But
you heard it here first, folks.
If we were starting a Wesleyan college today, we wouldn't have 5. We needed to have 5 because the only way you could get around was by car or maybe plane. Yeah. And so students needed a Wesleyan college in their region, to meet their people. But if we were to start one today, we probably wouldn't have 5 Wesleyan colleges. And so, and of course, I'm not sure all Wesleyans care about Wesleyan theology. So why have Wesleyan colleges if we've got a good Bible college near me? Mm-hmm. So the situation is real, I think, and decline is real. So the post I did today is basically about how Campus EDU makes it possible for us to have Latin and German and Russian and Mandarin and all kinds of courses and engineering programs and computer science programs where no one college would be able to justify that major or that department. By providing a platform where we can all network together, we can actually enrich the curriculum in a way it hasn't been enriched since the 1940s when so like my grandfather taught, he was a Wabash College graduate in 1907, so you've taken calculus, Frankfurt Pilgrim College, why don't you teach calculus here? You've taught, you took Latin, why don't you teach Latin? So those days are gone where we teach those subjects. So I don't just see Campus EDU as an opportunity to make it easy, although it is. And I mentioned earlier on that I think we're just not, I have to think, I don't have the solution. I have to think we're just not teaching correctly or best. We're not, there's a whole lot of people we're not connecting with. And I don't think it's because, well, they're not smart enough to pay attention for an hour and a half in my lecture, Tom Nichols says. I think that we can, there are lost sheep out there who could be doctors, but they're not going to make it if they have to get through a first semester chemistry class. That's a little bit of my vision, but campus is, I'll own it. Campus is primarily for those who won't go to Harvard, or those who, campus is not being designed for the students who are going to go to Brown, or Vanderbilt or wherever. Those students are going to continue to go to those MIT. They're going to continue to go to those schools. It's really aiming toward those who probably could do some of those same things, but they don't have the open door. I could go on and on. My daughter has decided to go to a couple of schools, one of my daughters too, a couple of schools that are very pricey in my view. I've felt like, I want her to have the best launching that she can have. And if you can see me, sweating and, trying to open my collar so I can breathe better, but definitely the vast majority of people would never have been able to figure out how to do something like that, to get her there. She's a very privileged person, I would say. Campus makes it possible, I think, for a whole lot of people to be privileged. At least that's what we're aiming for. And the quality of the platform is as good as the colleges that put courses in it.
Right. Yeah. So you're very evangelical.
Yes.
Evangelistic and evangelical in it. It's beautiful. We'll link to those articles too, because I think that'd be helpful for people to be able to see. Just like, in really briefly, because this is a point of clarification. Then Campus EDU is not a school.
No, not at all.
It is a platform for schools to be able to offer courses through their schools. So you can't get a
Absolutely.
degree. You can't get a degree from Campus EDU. You get a
That's
degree
correct.
from Southern Wesleyan University, Kingswood University, Wheaton College, but whoever you happen to be partnering with, and then they offer your courses through there. So it's kind of mostly an online platform. So if I've seen correctly, some schools could theoretically create their own course content through your platform. Is this right?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Campus does not um, technically offer these courses.
Right.
Campus does not offer any degrees. It's the individual schools that do it. It's kind of like an Amazon, where you buy a book from Doubleday through Amazon, you buy a course from Houghton through Campus, or a course from Indiana Wesleyan through Campus.
Mm-hmm.
We are in this early stage, investing, and by investing I don't mean me personally, but somebody is investing an awful lot of money in helping those courses be a little bit like masterclass.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of investment in videography going on, and the idea is that we want these courses to be as engaging for a generation that probably loses their attention within 7 or 8 minutes. Um, uh, this podcast would be torture, but
They're not
but
listening. Don't worry.
there, um, we've invested quite a bit on the front end here to
Right.
get people into the platform. Eventually, I see a day, one day when uh, an individual professor will go to Campus Studio, which doesn't exist yet. It exists in the mind of Campus. They'll go into Campus Studio. They'll upload a video here. They'll upload a book here. They'll put the pieces together, and colleges will be able to say, "Well, I like that course," and offer it to their students. I'm Southern Wesleyan, and I endorse this course. To where it's a true platform,
Right.
where people are uploading courses that they're making themselves into it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very almost like a franchise at that point in time, because then you can see how the content would become uh, not so localized, right? So like the same course will be offered in Oklahoma, and it'll be offered in Oregon, and it'll be offered in Oromocto, which is just outside of Fredericton, if you don't know, as most people won't. Um, wow, fascinating. So yeah, just as we wrap up here, like I don't have really good language for this, unfortunately, but this is a constant thing that comes up in any conversation, but in this one in particular, it seems to be recurring as well, which is, you're very aware of the fact that, hey, like, listen, it's an imperfect situation, but we're going to walk into the situation and we're going to do what we need to do to get this outcome. We want to be able to help people get this knowledge, get these skills, because we think it's going to be beneficial. And it's, you have a very Christian heart behind it. But the thing that often, and you see this, I'm sure you see this, I know you see this, but not everybody always sees it, and nobody can see it with perfect clarity, is that every single time that you fix a problem, or you fix a presenting problem, sometimes it creates other problems further down the road, right? We patch up the pipe here, and then we don't realize that 50 feet down the way it's sprung a new leak. And that's the one thing that I do wonder about, is when you alluded to, hey, people have difficult attention spans. Let's make sure that let's add some more jolts per minute to this video so that we can keep people engaged. That always kind of makes me go a little bit wiggly, because I go, yes, yes, and also yes, but, and it always makes me a little bit nervous. At the end of the day, you would probably self-describe yourself as a pragmatist. Would that be a fair
there's
statement?
quite a bit of pragmatist in me, yes.
And so you can see, like, that's why just kind of somebody ragging on, he doesn't, at the end of this book, there's not, here's my 13 recommendations on how to make sure people respect experts or whatever. Like, that's not there. It's very diagnostic. Here's the situation. I don't really know what we can do, because I think probably he looks and goes, I don't know, maybe doomy gloomy, I don't know if there is a great solution. But But people like you and I have great hope and great faith in the future because we know that the kingdom is coming and that the kingdom has come, right? So we know that all of these things will find their solutions. We're just kind of stumbling through them and hoping to find them along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in honors colleges. I believe in residential colleges. I don't think that residential colleges are going to end. It's just I'm just not sure that colleges can survive, or let me say that most colleges will be able to survive.
Now, tell us a little bit about your dogs. Who do you have back there for canines?
Yeah, I'm sorry. They just everything of wind that comes by. So I try to mute before it gets too loud. They're barking at me. They're probably hearing us talk in here, and they're thinking, "Stranger, danger."
I should be in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So like the Honors College at Houghton, they're in London right now for London Honors. And I know that a snappy financial administrator might come in and say, we need to cut that program,
Right.
and save money. Although frankly, I'm not going to get into the argument. I think it makes money for Houghton in the long run. But those students by and large can sit and talk about really deep conversations for hours on end. And that's wonderful. I have no desire to kill those sorts of programs, but I just don't think that most Christian colleges are going to be able to stay open if that's the only thing or even the main thing that they're doing.
Right.
I just think unless we kill a whole bunch of them off, which the naysayers are saying, yeah, another college has died. It's like a Hunger Games, da 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 da. Which college died today? I think we just have to partner together. We've got to network together, in order to keep a lot of these colleges afloat. I think. I could be wrong.
And Nichols would say, I think you can tell me if we're misrepresenting you, but I think he would say. That's all well and good as long as people don't think that necessarily the degree that they're going to get via this kind of modified module program is the same degree that they're going to get if they go to Harvard or if they go to Oxford or whatever. Because at the end of the day, when was the last time somebody asked to see your diploma?
Every time I take a new job.
They do actually check. Good for them.
Every college I've ever worked at wants to see it.
They want to see the piece of paper. Okay. But it's funny, like you can get, I remember it would have been 3 or 4 years ago. Somebody was telling me about how they just become a doctor. And anyway, it turns out you can just become a doctor. Did you know that you can just buy a doctorate? Like it's literally like diploma mills are real and genuine places where if you pay enough money. But I mean, I could show them my diploma.
I've vetted CVs where a person has maybe a legitimate master's and an illegitimate doctorate. And, as soon as I've seen that, I'm sorry. See, there's a little bit of Nichols in me. As soon as I see the illegitimate doctor, I think, no way we're going to even look at you.
Well, yeah, for sure. That very rightly so. That's misrepresentation. But I mean, and that's on when you want to go an up and down spectrum or a left to right spectrum. Like there's literal like places again where you pay your money, you take your chances, you're gonna get a piece of paper, and then there's these ones that we're gonna consider to be the cat's pajamas, and then we know that there's oh, you got your doctorate from here, it's fantastic. Oh, you got your doctorate from here.
But at the same time, we're talking. I would argue we're talking averages in a way too, because I guarantee you that there have been plenty of classes at Oklahoma Wesleyan or wherever where the students got more from the class than somebody who went to a particular class at Harvard. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Sure, of course. Yeah.
We're talking averages, because there are bum professors at Princeton or bum class setups at Purdue, or wherever. Yep. We're talking on average. I mean, I do think, and I agree that you don't know what you don't know. That I've had, so I won't tell you who it was. People would know who this was, but took classes with me at a Wesleyan. Probably took enough to minor in me. The classes would minor me, and then went to Princeton. and had a class to take a Hebrews class at Princeton with somebody, and said, I didn't want to spoil it. I thought, well, thanks. But the idea was, it probably would have been so much better than the Hebrews I had with you, Ken. That I didn't want to trample on the good memories of my time with you. But I mean, it's kind of that way. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people who think that I'm just, believe it or not, there are some people who think I'm smart, and then they go on to Princeton or somewhere, and they're like, yeah, Ken got me in the door, but he really has no idea who Hegel was. But
Well, I think that's an excellent place to.
which, by the way, I don't have any idea who Hegel was.
You do knew who he was, and you could at least cite 3 different concepts of his. But you're no Hegel scholar. You're a Hebrew scholar, is what you are. And so
I'm working toward a synthesis there.
Yeah, well, you left me in a beautiful position to be able to close off by saying the reason that I've been most excited about this is because I am one of the people who thinks that you're brilliant. And I know that anybody who listens to this will not necessarily be somebody who attends a Wesleyan church. You could even potentially be somebody who doesn't attend any church, which would be mind-boggling to me that you've stuck along this long in these various conversations. But hey, you are very welcome here. But to anybody who is within the, especially the North American Wesleyan church, Ken has been... he would refer to himself this way, and I would affirm it entirely. A bit of an academic translator for our people, and I've benefited greatly, and I know so many people who've benefited greatly from that translation work. And so I get to say on the record, thank you. I'm truly grateful for your work and for what you've been able to share with us, and for what's coming ahead in Campus Edu. Even though I presented as a mixed,
Sure.
I think for the most part I'm excited for it. We'll find out.
Check it out. If it can't cut the mustard, well, so be it.
Hey, if it's all about pragmatics, then we'll just see how it works out. Thank you very much for your time, Doctor. Yes. Talk to you soon.